Alright, let's try this again. Yep, okay. Everything seems to be alright here. Yeah. Alright, we are live. Just wait for the chat room to fill up. Apologies for, again, the delay in this live stream and also not giving you guys adequate notice. Well, I'm just so busy this week. It's ridiculous. It's been so busy, man. It's been crazy. So I'm gonna be live streaming here for a while, maybe hour and a half, something like that, hour and a half. So hopefully that'll be enough notice for people to get involved. So all right, just waiting for some people to join the live chat, and we can get this started. Whatever you guys want to talk about today is all good. All right, nobody in the chat yet. I guess it's early. There's a lot more people in the evening. Right now, nobody's joined the chat. In the evening, there's always people about one watching, and it's just me. So wait for people to get the notifications. All right, Graham Coleman, what's up? What's happening, bro? Nottingham in the house. Graham Coleman says, has a movie ever made you cry? And if so, what movie? If a movie ever made me cry, it must have been when I was a child, but I don't remember any movie ever making me cry. I can't recall that in my life. No. No, I'm not really a particularly emotional person like that. Okay, you're from Nottingham originally. You live in Berlin. All right. Oh, Big Nasty. What's up? Berlin, very interesting city. I remember when the Berlin Wall came down, the end of communism. Yes, yes, Froch podcast, indeed. or Froch video on YouTube, yeah, about Froch's career. Some people were asking me about James DeGale's career. Well, I don't really care about DeGale like that. He's not really that interesting to me. Okay, Graham Coleman says it's a beautiful city, mate. People are a little rude, but overall it's great. Yeah, Germans kind of have a reputation of being cold, and the Germans I've known, they do have that vibe. They're kind of cold and very. How do you even describe Germans? They're just a lot of them just are very cold, very digi, very like. I don't even know how to describe them, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about since you live in Germany. I've heard that the street food in Berlin is great. Great street food. But whenever I think about World War Two, and I'm not trying to be derogatory here, right? But whenever I think about World War Two and the Nazis, and I look at German people today, you can see where the Nazi mentality came from. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Again, I'm not trying to be derogatory, but people change, but they don't change that much. You have a certain amount of people in society who are a particular way, and they just need to be enabled. So during that time in German history, they enabled a certain section of the population, putting them into positions of power within the Nazi party. They had the SS and the stormtroopers and all that kind of stuff. And the Nazis were an extremely well-oiled machine, as we all know. They were very efficient, they were intelligent, they they were extremely organized, and that's German people to a T, isn't it? German people are like that anyway. So they just basically the Nazis were like Germans on steroids in a certain sense. Do you know what I mean? Like they took that extreme organization and the discipline and all that kind of the studiousness and the industriousness the German people already have, and they kind of concentrated it into the Nazi party, and it took off. And they did like, obviously, I'm not a Nazi, and I'm not an advocate for Nazis, but in terms of what they did for Germany in a short space of time, that was crazy. Like the way they were able to take Germany from being on its knees to being the industrial and technological powerhouse of Europe in a few short years, that was incredible. Has anything ever been done like that before in Europe? I don't know. But in a very short space of time, they turned Germany from being basically destitute to being a superpower. It's incredible stuff. And one of the things that they did as well, I've spoken about this before, is the Germans, or the Nazis, sorry, part of their ideology is that women are supposed to be at home raising children. And this shows you that that system, that traditional system, is very efficient. Do you understand? And again, I don't want to, give the wrong impression like I'm saying women should be forced to be in the house. Hell no. But it just shows you the benefits of that system where men are out in the field doing the majority of the work. Women were working too in Nazi Germany, don't get it twisted, but there was an emphasis for women staying in the home, and being with the kids and all that kind of business, whereas men go out and do the work. And they were just extremely efficient, and there's things to be learned from the Germans in general. Not necessarily the Nazis, but the Germans in general. There's definitely things to be learned from them. But yeah, their attitude takes a bit of getting used to, because British people tend to be a bit more rough around the edges than German people. German people are a bit serious. That's the perception that most Brits have of Germans, in it. They're a bit serious, a bit like, yeah. All right, Graham Coleman says street food is good, best kebabs you ever had. Uh, okay, Asim Khan says, come on, Hatman, it's Juma time, bro. Yeah, apologies, bro, but I gotta do these things when I gotta do them. Um, okay, MS2 says, why do a lot of Africans look down on Nigerians? I think a lot of Africans look down on Nigerians because Nigerians, and not again, no disrespect to any Nigerians who are listening, but Nigerians are, they are, how can I put this without sounding terrible? Nigerians are known as being the most criminal of all Africans. And I'm just being real. That's why they're known. They're known as being the most criminal of all Africans. And that's why a lot of Africans look down upon them. Like in South Africa, for example, I've known a lot of South African people over the years. And they say that the majority of the drug dealing that goes on in South Africa is done by Nigerians. Um, and many other parts of Africa where you find Nigerians, they're often up to no good. It's not to say that there are no legitimate Nigerians, of course there are, but Nigeria has become synonymous with fraud as well, international fraud. And that's not just hype. In my personal life, I've known so many Nigerians, and most of them, if have either been involved with fraud themselves, I'm talking about the men, or if they haven't been involved with fraud themselves, they know somebody, a family member, a friend, etc., who's been involved in fraud. So it's like it's a culture of get rich or die trying in Nigeria. You know, they go to extremes that other Africans are not willing to go to. They have a very different kind of demeanor, and I'm talking in very general terms here because in Nigeria there are lots of different ethnic groups, there are lots of different tribes, but in general, Nigerians are a lot more loud. They're a lot more overtly materialistic. They, you know, that's how they tend to be. Ghanaians, for example, are a lot quieter than Nigerians. They talk more quietly. They behave more quietly. Their country, although it's not without crime, there's plenty of crime in Ghana, but nowhere near like it is in Nigeria. Same for Ugandans, and I'm talking about African. I'm talking about the African countries that have a large presence in Britain because those are the people who I'm most familiar with. But Ugandans are generally quiet people. They're not loud. They talk quiet. They talk in a very subdued tone. When they speak. Whereas Nigerians are very loud, often and brash and stuff like that. So I think there are many different reasons why a lot of Africans look down upon Nigerians, but the criminality has certainly got something to do with it. The loudness, the brashness, etc. A lot of other Africans don't like that. So yeah, there's many different reasons. I was actually watching a video. In fact, let me get the chat up on the screen in a second here. 1 second here, people. I was watching a video called "Who Wouldn't You Date?" I think it was called "Who Wouldn't You Date?" Something like that. And it was mainly black people who they were asking what nationality wouldn't you date, and they had a male version and a female version, and time and time and time again Nigerians came up. Like even Nigerians were saying I don't date Nigerians. So yeah, that is what that is, and that's not to diss Nigerians. One of my best friends is Nigerian, you know, but I'm just being real. Yeah, Graham Coleman says the average German is well more educated than the average Brit. I'm not hating; it's just reality. Indeed, indeed. That's what I always say about the Nazis, because Germans get criticized heavily by a lot of other, Europeans, and people look at the Germans as if they were stupid or something. No, the Germans were more highly educated and far more intelligent than the British. Facts. So if the Germans can get led down that particular path, what makes any other nation think they can't get led down that path? What makes them think they're so intellectually superior that they couldn't go the same way as the Germans? They could. Do you understand? That shows you, because the Germans were a very highly educated people. But that shows you the sheep-like nature of human beings, the innate sheep-like behavior that humans in every country display. It just takes the right set of circumstances, and it takes social engineers who have a particular agenda or want to steer people in a certain way to create a Nazi Germany. You could do it in Britain, no problem. If you had the right kind of social engineers, it could happen here too. No problem at all. Okay, Ayed says, Hatman, don't you think this unwritten rule that not hitting girls back in self-defense is dangerous with more and more trans people entering society? Yeah, I think it's dangerous anyway, because male-female relations are just going down the toilet in the Western world, and women are becoming more contemptuous. I'm talking in general. Women are becoming more contemptuous of men, and I'm sure we've all seen the videos of women just attacking men physically and all this kind of business, and you're not supposed to hit the woman back. Nonsense. Any adult who lashes out at me, puts laser finger on me, I'm going to defend myself. I don't give a damn if it's a man or a woman, because nobody has the right to put their hands on me. End of story. It's the end of story. But you got all these simps running around who they're pushing this this agenda as well, where it's like under no circumstances are you allowed to hit a woman. Self-defense. Listen, I will defend myself against any human being. Do not attack me. That's all I'm saying. I'm not out here hitting nobody, so nobody's got the right to be hitting me. That's the way I see it. Do not put no hands on me. Okay, Graham Coleman says, little side note on boxing, DAZN are huge in Germany. They have a complete stranglehold over football, even have Champions League rights now. J.I. says, big up Hatman, it's Jacob. Unfortunately, I'm not Jewish, so I can't give any more insight into the Jewish culture. Alright, cool. No issue. Big up Jacob. S54 says, what do you think of the offer Hearn apparently offered Wilder? I'll be making a YouTube video about that, but, my initial thoughts on the offer that Hearn made Wilder, he offered Wilder a fight previously, right? And that was also on DAZN. I think if he really wants Wilder to fight AJ, and he does, he should drop out this whole DAZN tie-in, because he's trying to tie Wilder into DAZN for like 2 or 3 fights. I think he needs to drop that. I think he needs to just negotiate with Wilder without any kind of DAZN tie-in, and try and come to some kind of resolution that way, because Hearn has said that Anthony Joshua could fight on Showtime. Yeah, they could do that. They would obviously prefer for him to fight Wilder on DAZN, but they're not going to let a television network get in the way of the undisputed fight. So having all this DAZN tie-in and all this kind of business, there's no way that Heyman's going to go for that. I know Wilder says I'm a free agent, and Wilder is a hillbilly. We all know this. Wilder's not a smart guy. He's a foolish guy. So he's going to say all kinds of stuff which isn't true. Not necessarily because he's being deliberately dishonest. He's just not in the know. He's just not bright enough to work certain things out. So, yeah. I think Hearn should just offer Wilder a monetary offer and negotiate the platform that's going to show the fight, rather than say, okay, a free fight deal, all fights on DAZN. Nah, man. No. Yeah, big up Kaide. Big up Alexander. MS2 says, I read that it's because the country, Nigeria, don't share their resources with other African countries. I don't know about that, because other African countries have got loads of resources. Africa is resource rich. I mean, the Congo has more, to my knowledge, the Congo has more mineral wealth, more resources than any other country on the planet, the Congo. And many parts of Africa are resource rich. You know, they've got resources in Uganda. Uganda, they've got oil and minerals and all kinds of stuff there, and all over Africa. So now I don't think it's really about um, Nigeria not sharing their resources. I think it's more the things I already mentioned. Like I say, South Africa is a very, very long way from Nigeria. But when you speak to South Africans, they're always like, oh, Nigerians are drug dealers and criminals and all this kind of business. Big Nasty says German whips are nice. Yeah, German engineering is renowned, isn't it? They've been making nice cars for a long time. And even today, we've got the legacy of Nazi engineering with Volkswagen. Volkswagen is the Nazi car company. Some of you will know that, some of you won't know that. But look that up. That's public record. Volkswagen is the Nazi car company. They started it. Marky Mark says Germans have always been more educated and they seem to be very competitive in most sports. Must be part of their culture. Yeah, it is. For some reason, the Germans have always been very organized, very disciplined, and just very about their business. They're no nonsense in it, Germans. It's like the German mentality was encapsulated, was embodied by their football team. You know the German national football team in the 90s, and even the German in the Bundesliga, all the clubs, they had a way of playing football that wasn't spectacular, but it was very effective. It was very organized, it was very disciplined, it was very precise. They didn't really play with much flair, but they played with discipline and they were reliable, you know? Whereas the British team were kind of like all over the place. Sorry, not British team, England. The England team was all over the place where we had, Gaza, we had moments of brilliance, but we didn't have the discipline and the mentality of the German team to have that kind of consistent success. I know in recent years Germany hasn't been as successful in terms of their national football team, but yeah, it really showed you the German mentality even in their sports teams. Chazzy D, big up. He says, what do you think about the philosophy of the 52 Commandments by Guru Gobind Singh? Left you a link on the 7th of February podcast. Alright, my bad, I haven't checked that out yet. I'll have to check that out. 52 Commands by Guru Gobind Singh. So this is an Indian guru. India is obviously full of gurus, which is one of the interesting things about India, of course. Because when you think about gurus and when you think about cults, because India is obviously awash with cults, a cult is how a religion starts up, right? I mean, when you hear the story of Jesus, when his 12 disciples, that was a cult, wasn't it? I don't want to be disrespectful to any Christians, but that was a cult. And from that cult grew a religion. So that's how religions start, with cults. So when you look at India, you're really looking at the ancient world. That's what's so fascinating about places like India, because it gives you an insight into how the world used to be thousands of years ago, with all these different cults springing up and these different leaders and all that kind of business. In the Holy Land, it was the same back then. There was loads of different cult leaders, loads of different people claiming to be messiahs and all that kind of business, with disciples and followers. And yeah, India gives you an insight into how it used to be there. Okay, Rockefeller says, if the Nazis won World War II, would the world be a more peaceful place now? It's a very good question. It's impossible to say, but I do kind of, in the media, right? In the movies and in the video games, like for example, there's a video game called Wolfenstein. And in the Wolfenstein universe, the Nazis won World War II. So they give you, their version of how they think the Nazi world would be. And it's always negative. It's always terrible. It's always like doom and gloom and everybody's suffering. But when you look at Germany under the Nazis, yes, it was very foreign to us because Hitler almost had the status of a demigod, and the Germans were all Hail Hitler and doing the salute and all that kind of thing. So it's very strange to us because we don't think that way. But from the research I've done into World War II, and you can go and watch the Netflix documentary, which is a pretty good documentary. It's in many, many different parts on World War II. And in that documentary, and that's a very mainstream documentary, they also document the fact that Hitler didn't want to invade the UK. Hitler did not want to try and conquer Britain. Hitler was trying to make a deal with the UK whereby Britain would get to keep its empire. So he wasn't trying to go in there and take Britain's empire off it. Hitler was obviously he had certain plans and he was trying to annex certain land, but he wasn't trying to go as far as he ended up going. He ended up going as far as he did because he felt like he was under attack. He felt like if he didn't attack Russia and, invade France and all these other countries, that it was either his neck or our neck. Do you understand what I'm saying? So Hitler did what he felt like he had to do to prevent Germany getting taken down. And he was willing to go to the ends of the earth to try and achieve that goal. Obviously he lost. But yeah, I mean, the point I'm making basically is I do think people are a little over the top when it comes to the condemnation of the Nazis. They obviously did terrible things, but everybody did terrible things in World War II. Let's get that straight. Yeah, the bombing of Dresden and other civilian areas in Germany was horrific, right, by the RAF. You're not going to try to tell me that wasn't like a crime against humanity. So all sides committed atrocities. The Russians committed atrocities. Everybody blames the Germans and the Germans are so terrible, but all sides committed horrible atrocities in that war. That's why World War II is so disgusting, because everybody was just up to no good. Obviously, Hiroshima indeed, big nasty. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it was horrible. So I think the Germans do get, the scapegoat status. but one of the interesting things is over the last few years, there's been more and more revelations about Winston Churchill. Because for many, many years, he was painted as this British hero. But in recent years, even in the mainstream now in Britain, there's kind of revelations coming out about Winston Churchill that he wasn't such a good guy and actually was a really horrible guy. And alternative researchers in the UK have been saying this for a long time. They've been saying for a very long time that Churchill was actually a scumbag. And if it wasn't for World War II, he wouldn't be fondly remembered. He wasn't somebody who was highly revered in British politics prior to World War II. He wasn't highly thought of. So yeah, that's an interesting thing, as people are now going back and saying actually Churchill wasn't the guy that we thought he was. But in terms of would the world be a more peaceful place, there's kind of this cartoonish image that we get of Nazis, right? That Hitler just wanted to take over the world, and the whole world had to be under the rule of the Aryan race, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed master race. There was an element of that in the Nazi philosophy. Of course there was. But I don't know whether they wanted to impose that on the whole world. Because one of their closest allies in World War II were the Japanese, right? And the Japanese are obviously not Aryans. I know that there might be some people who claim that there's some type of ancient link between the Japanese, right, and the Aryans of Nazi Germany. But an Oriental Japanese person is clearly nothing like a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Caucasian German. All right, so, and that was their closest ally. And one of the interesting things as well, which I've talked about, is the Nazis were all about racial homogeny. They wanted Germany to be a racially homogeneous country. They were not against having people of other races in Germany entirely. No, not at all. Because as I've mentioned previously, Jesse Owens, for example, went to Germany on many occasions, Nazi Germany, and he said he was treated better in Nazi Germany than he was in America. Just let that sink in. And W.E. Du Bois as well, the famous black author, he visited Nazi Germany and he said similar things. He said he was treated better by the Nazis in Germany than he was by white Americans, just to put things in perspective. So, yeah, they were about racial homogeny in their country, and so were the Japanese, of course, right? Japanese, to this day, is still a pretty racially homogenous country. So it was the racially homogenous countries like Germany, Japan, Italy, teaming up against the multiculturalists. Not all of them were multiculturalists at the time, but they were to go on to become multiculturalists. Britain was to a certain extent, but more so after World War II. America obviously was. France, etc. So you can see where the battle lines are drawn ideologically. Do you understand? Like Germany and Japan, these are countries who like to stay racially homogenous and they're not into the whole multicultural thing. Whereas like Britain, France, America, they're into the whole multiculturalism. And I know multiculturalism and multiracialism is sold as a great thing, all-inclusiveness, but I look at what those countries actually do. Do you understand what I'm saying? And those countries do a lot of bombing, a lot of killing. The same way with the whole gay movement, you know, gay and liberal and all this kind of stuff is supposedly synonymous with goodness. But the countries who are pushing pro-gay and transgender are the countries who are doing the most bombing, doing the most killing. Do you understand what I'm saying? That there's a disconnect, there's a contradiction there between what you're being sold and the reality. So, yeah, anyway, I'm rambling all over the place here, but in terms of Nazi Germany, would it be a more peaceful place? I can't answer that question. You know, I can't answer. I don't know, but I don't think it would be. Let me say this. I don't think it would be as bad as they're trying to claim it would be. That's what I will say. I don't think if the Nazis had won World War II, I don't think the world would be as bad as they're trying to claim. Because it's kind of a cartoonish perspective that they give on the Nazis. Not really a realistic perspective. Alright, Graham Coleman says there is a huge cultural difference between older German people than younger. I do find it that when the older German sees that I'm British, they are quite distant. Yeah, I mean, there was it was a horrible war. Do you know what I mean? Like the amount of German civilians that were murdered. Let's get it right. It's murdered. You know, when Dresden was bombed, that was a targeted campaign against German civilians. That wasn't an accident. You know, Churchill and the RAF decided we are going to target civilians and we're going to pummel the German civilians until we break the spirit of the country. That was the philosophy behind the bombing of Dresden and other civilian areas in Germany. Is we wanted to break the spirit of the people. And of course the older Germans are going to remember that. Even if they weren't alive during the war themselves, they're going to remember the trauma from their parents, you know, losing family members and all this kind of stuff. They're going to remember all that. So you know, you can't expect them to be anything but resentful, you know? And they're always told that they should be guilty. They should feel guilty about their history and their past. And look, they did some bad things, but they had a lot of bad things done to them too. You know? There were plenty of victims in Nazi Germany, man, and I'm not talking about victims of the Nazis, you know? Victims of the Allies. Victims of the Russians and victims of the Brits and victims of the, you know, etc., etc. So... Alright, J.I. says the only person permitted to lay hands on you is your mum when she's delivering an apocalyptic ass whooping. Okay, Mohammed Rashid says, yes, Hatman, what do you think of the Pakistan versus India situation? I'm not as clued up about Pakistan and India as some people, but obviously I know that Pakistan was a country that was created by the British because they divided India, because it all used to be India before. They divided it up into Bangladesh and, India, Pakistan, etc. And Pakistan was the area where they put all the Muslims. To my understanding, it was already heavily populated. That area of India, which became Pakistan, was already heavily populated with Muslims. But once they created that country as a Muslim nation, it obviously attracted a lot more Muslims from India to move there. And there is inter-religious conflict to this day between, I guess, Hindu people and Muslims, both in India and, of course, between India and Pakistan. And obviously there is the famous dispute over the Kashmir region. I don't really know what this whole Kashmir dispute is about, why India and Pakistan have been fighting over that bit of land for so long. Maybe some Asian people can enlighten me and tell me why. Right, Marky Mark says, hey Hatman, do you think that Klitschko will make a comeback? He seems to be in the picture floating around still. Yeah, he seems like he wants to make a comeback. Whether or not he will remains to be seen. He's definitely got the itch. And it's difficult for fighters to walk away because Klitschko's had so much success. He's been boxing from when he was a little boy. It's all he knows. It's very difficult to transition into a different field, because as a fighter, you live that life and it becomes you. It's like even me. I was never a professional boxer. I boxed as an amateur. But to this day, it sounds like Deontay Wilder now. To this day, I still train. I still go gym. I still have to punch stuff. I can't go a week or a couple weeks without doing some kind of boxing related training. I start to feel funny. And that's just me, a regular guy. Vladimir Klitschko is somebody who's been doing hardcore training for decades. He's been fighting. He's been, getting the adulation of the public, making huge purses and getting the bar. Like, to all of a sudden flick a switch and all of that ends, it must be extremely difficult. Particularly when his last fight against AJ was a very competitive fight. That's a fight that he could have won. So for him to be able to walk away, it must be extremely difficult. And what do you do with yourself when you quit boxing? For someone like a Klitschko, what's he going to do? Be a pundit? Can you really see Klitschko being a pundit? He doesn't seem the pundit type to me. So he wants to be more proactive. I know was there some talk about Klitschko becoming an actor or something? I know David Hay wanted to be an actor. I'm not sure about Klitschko. I think there's some talk about Klitschko maybe being an actor. But yeah, he has all kinds of different projects and stuff he's involved with outside of boxing. But does he get the same satisfaction from that as he did from boxing? Probably not, which is why he's looking at a potential comeback. So yeah. And by the way, I was thinking the other day, and I'll probably do a video about this on my YouTube channel. I was thinking about Tyson Fury and his public persona, because he has a public persona just like AJ does. I talked about this in a video a long time. It's just that Tyson Fury's public persona is more convincing. He's a better actor than AJ. AJ is wooden as hell. I mean, you wouldn't allow AJ anywhere near a film set. you'd need signs. If AJ's in the area, you'd need signs on any film set saying, do not let this man enter the building. Because AJ cannot act to save his life. That's why his public persona comes across as so wooden and so false. But Tyson Fury's got a public persona too. It's just Tyson Fury is a much better actor. And if any of the heavyweights could go into acting, like actual professional acting, after their boxing career is done, Tyson Fury's the man. I think he'd be a fantastic actor, actually. Because he has a taste for the theatrical, Tyson Fury. I think he'd be a great actor. Okay, Area says Germans are good at penalties. Yep. Okay, G-Man Boxing says, big up Hatman, I have a pair of fly gloves coming next week. Do you know if they're any good? It would take a good glove to get me to change from Everlast. Fly gloves are very expensive, so they should be good. They're made from the same leather that they make Rolls-Royce car seats out of. And they're a British produced glove, and they were produced in conjunction with, I think, Adam Booth. Adam Booth had a lot of input in terms of the design of the glove, so they've changed the design of the fly gloves slightly over the years. The original fly gloves kind of looked like fight gloves. They really looked a lot like fight gloves because they were very, very supple. You could open your hand fully. There was no resistance at all. But the latest iteration of the fly gloves look a lot more like most of the other gloves out there, where it's like a one piece of foam. I don't know if it's IMF foam, injected molded foam, but the shape of the glove looks a lot more uniform, and I think that's just an aesthetic choice. People want gloves to look uniform and nice straight edges and all this kind of business. I don't really care so much about that. I care mostly about the functionality of the glove. So I don't know about the latest version of fly gloves. I'd be very interested to hear what your thoughts are on the fly gloves. They're definitely going to be better quality in terms of build quality than the Everlast, but whether you like the shape and the type of padding that they use in the fly gloves over the Everlast, that remains to be seen. You might not. It's like with Cleto Reyes, right? Cleto Reyes gloves are fantastic build quality. For the price, they're second to none. But I don't like the shape of Cleto Reyes gloves. And I'm talking about the training gloves, the sparring. I don't like the shape of them. I don't like the way they fit on my hand. Most of them are uncomfortable. But the build quality is fantastic. And so you're going to find the build quality in the fly gloves, I'm sure, is going to be way better than the Everlast. It's just whether you like the fit. Okay, Ayed says, Hatman, why didn't the Germans in World War II, instead of trying to kill the Jews and others, just make them work in the factories to help the war effort? Well, they did do that. That's what they did do. The so-called Nazi death camps were actually labor camps. Yeah, and if you look into the work of Dr. Nick Kollerstrom, who was a academic from Cambridge University, and also look into the work of David Irving, you'll find a lot of evidence that a lot of the people who were killed in Auschwitz, specifically Auschwitz, were killed because, or sorry, a lot of the bodies that were burned were dead bodies. So I'm not saying that they weren't gassing Jews and all this kind of stuff. They may well have been, but they were also burning bodies of people who died from disease, because in these labor camps, you've got a hell of a lot of people all squashed together in these labor camps. Disease is going to spread like wildfire. So what happens when people are coming down with all these kind of infectious diseases? You don't want that spreading through the labor camps, because that's the labor, right? So you want to burn them bodies and get rid of them. Now, in the opinion and in the work of David Irving and Nick Kollerstrom, they're trying to say that the vast majority of Jews who were burned were not gassed and shot and stuff like that just for being Jews. No, that they were people who ended up getting diseases and they burned their bodies as a result. And they're basically coming from the perspective that this whole gassing the Jews and putting them in ovens is just a made up thing, and of course they were killed, but at no higher rate than non-Jews were killed in the labor camps. So that's their perspective. I can't 100% verify any of that, but I'm just giving you the alternative, because that's obviously what you don't hear. But in terms of why did they put people to work, they did. There are plenty of Jews who survived those labor camps. And that's what they were. They were labor camps. They were there to work and build stuff and so on and so forth. Big Nasty says, Piers Morgan was defending Churchill vehemently on a recent Good Morning Britain, arguing against how do you pronounce that name? Keindi Andrews. Yeah, well, Piers Morgan's going to do that. Piers Morgan is an establishment man. So he's going to argue for the British establishment all the time, isn't he? For the old guard. He's always going to do that. I've got very little time for Piers Morgan. I think he's a cockroach of a man. Apologies if I'm not getting to everybody's comments here. Yeah, Kieran Sylvester says Britain were the only good guys. I learned that's what I learned in school. Exactly. Sophie, big up Sophie. She says it's highlighted in what we are taught. Self-teaching and self-research is always needed. Indeed, it is, because you're not going to hear the other side of the story from the schools or the government. You have to find out the other side of the story for yourself, more often than not. Kieran says America is a strange country. I watched a documentary where he said he's never seen a white person apart from TV. Okay, I guess you're talking about a black guy, but no, that's impossible. I don't see how you could. I mean, I don't know, man. There are some areas of America which are very heavily populated by black people, like in Georgia. I think Atlanta is the blackest city, isn't it, in America now? I think it used to be Detroit, but I believe now it's Atlanta. So I don't know, maybe there are certain parts of the South where it's so black that I've never seen a white person in real life. Maybe. All right, Cash says, what did you make of Fury calling Klitschko a devil worshipper before their fight? Any legs to it? Well, I can't come up with any evidence that Klitschko was a devil worshipper, but I don't think Tyson Fury made that up out of thin air. I think he has heard rumors, and this is just my speculation. I think Tyson Fury has heard rumors, and he was speaking on the rumors, you know? That's all I can say about that, really. I wouldn't dismiss it. I think that witchcraft in the Western world is far more prevalent than people realize, and it's mostly confined to the upper echelons of society, because as I've spoken about before, I believe that during the witch trials, during the time when they were purging witches in Europe, I think that was a consolidation of the spiritual power. That was a way of the people at the top of society ensuring that they were the only ones who had the spiritual power. That they were getting rid of their competition, basically getting rid of their potential competition in the general population, and they were using Christianity as is it a Trojan horse, I guess would be the best way to describe it. They were hiding behind the cloak of Christianity and using Christianity as a justification for burning all these people for witchcraft in Europe. But the reality is, you can go back and look at Queen Elizabeth I, and she had a guy called John Dee, who was basically her sorcerer. Now, what is a woman who's supposed to be the head of the church doing with a sorcerer like John Dee so close to her, and you know, as one of her closest friends and confidants and advisors? This just shows there's a massive contradiction there. So that's what I think was going on, is that they were consolidating the spiritual power, and today it's job done. So the parts in the Western world where you're going to find real deep witchcraft are mainly in the upper echelons of society. That's my belief, I guess you could say, and that's my, I think, observation. So yeah, I wouldn't dismiss the possibility that Klitschko is into all kind of funky stuff. J.I. says, I'm pretty sure the Aryan race originated from Persia. Yes, they did. But the Nazis took stories, they took mythology from various different parts of the world. Okay, because even the swastika, that's a very ancient symbol. That's not something the Nazis came up with. That's something that you can find on Buddha, on statues of Buddha, for example. That's something you can find in India, the swastika. So they took mythology, symbols from all over the world, right? Not just from Persia and from India, but also from ancient Europe. And what they created was their own mythology to sell to their people. And this is important. If you're trying to build a nation, you have to basically give them a mythology, or give them a history of themselves, which is going to bind them together. Do you understand? You have to you have to create something which they can all rally around. And that's what the Germans did. That's what the Nazis did with taking pieces of different myths and ancient legends and stories and all this kind of stuff and symbols from all around the world and ancient cultures and combining it all to form something new. That's what they did. As I've said previously, the Nazis were not a political group which dabbled in the occult. They were an occult group which dabbled in politics. That's how deep the Nazis were into the occult and ancient myths, and they were deeply into all that kind of stuff. J.I. says, if you go to Iran, you see a lot of people with blonde hair and blue eyes. Yeah, and also next door in Afghanistan, there are people with blonde hair, blue eyes, and all that kind of business too. From what I've heard anyway. I've never been to Afghanistan. Okay, Stella says India was split by the British and they created all the different countries around like Pakistan, etc. by applying colorism, hence Pakistan being lighter. Kashmir is the result of these divisions. Alright, Graham Coleman cycling through Berlin, keeping healthy. Okay, Same Hussein says, Hatman, what's happening? Those RB5 bag mates are great. Have you used them yourself? Nah, not yet. Okay, you got a pair of the RB5s, yeah? Alright, see, everybody who's used them is saying they're great. The RB5s. So I might have to get a pair. They're only about, I think, £40 or something. So I might have to get a pair. Marky Mark says, yeah, Piers Morgan's a cockroach. There's no two sides. When he has a debate, it's just him. And he rarely lets the other person talk. He just keeps bombarding them with criticism, not giving them a chance to respond. Yeah, he's just... That guy's a donut. Kaide says, Hatman, do you really think Wilder wants the undisputed fight? He keeps talking about the emotional trauma he went through with the negotiations. That's some weird, weird shit to me for a fight. Yeah, it is weird. Wilder is a weirdo. Wilder is not a smart guy. He's just not. Does he really want to fight? I don't know. I don't know where Wilder's head is at. He's just such an unintelligent person. And he's probably got Shelley Finkel and Al Heyman and JDs and all these different people, Richard Schaefer, whispering different things in his ears. He's just confused at this point. It's probably them who's traumatized him. It's probably them whispering in his ear, telling him all kind of things that are pulling in his mind in different directions. That's where the traumas come from. I don't think the traumas really come from Eddie Hearn. So yeah, it is weird stuff. Very weird stuff. Liam Edmondson says, have you seen the Tommy Robinson doc? No, probably not the one you're talking about, but I've researched a lot into Tommy Robinson, who funds Tommy Robinson, and one of the things which has emerged over the past few years is that Tommy Robinson has been receiving enormous amounts of money from certain right-wing Zionist groups out of Israel. This is quite easily verifiable now. This is Tommy Robinson's been receiving a massive amount of money from them, which to me just shows you what that guy's all about. Hence his agenda to demonize Islam all the time, because he's funded by flipping Israel. G-Man Boxing says, Hatman, do you think the British will ever abolish the royal family? Not in my lifetime. The closest that Britain ever came to abolishing the royal family was when Princess Diana was alive. Britain actually came close, to get rid of the royal family. But that's one of the reasons why they got rid of Diana. Why the royals, in my opinion, got rid of Diana. Because she was going to bring them down. She was going to make the country basically replace the royals with Diana. That's how much Britain loved Princess Diana and was starting to hate the royals. So that's the closest we ever got in my lifetime, was when Diana was alive. And since then, the royal popularity has been growing, apparently anyway. I mean, I never trust the statistics that they give about the royal family's popularity, because there are so many royalists in the media who have an agenda. They're going to make out as though the royals are, ridiculously popular. In my in my personal experience, I suspect that most British people feel indifferent towards the royals. It's not like most British people are, you know, rabid royalists. I think most British people kind of feel indifferent, particularly the younger generations. People just feel like they shrug their shoulders and feel indifferent about the royals. There is a hard core of royalists, mainly in the older generations. Although, you know, when they brought Harry and Meghan in, that was to try and bring more young people into the royal fold and get more young people enthusiastic about the royal family again. That's what that was all about. Particularly with Meghan being mixed race, you know, because that appeals to the younger generation and, you know, progressive and all this kind of business. But yeah, I think with the royals, the majority of Brits, from what I've seen, are kind of indifferent. But then you've got a hardcore minority, and then you've got a hardcore of anti-royalists, you know, Republicans, and they're also a minority. So yeah, the way most people are indifferent, I can't see the royal family going anywhere in my lifetime. You know, like I say, in the mid late 90s, there was hostility growing towards the royal family. I've never seen that, you know, happen before or since. That whole Diana period where Diana was always in the news, you know, like every week Princess Diana was here, there, everywhere in the news, and talking trash about Charles, talking trash about the Queen, talking trash about Camilla, you know, and the whole of Britain was backing Diana and everyone was against the royals. Yeah, they got shook at that point. Okay, Ayed says Broner just used Hearn for publicity. Okay, Same Hussein says, yeah, Defo Hatman, there's no need for hand wraps and my hands and knuckles feel harder. You can go full power as there is some sort of hard padding. Yeah, I'm going to have to get a pair of those, you know, because there's too many good reviews of those mitts for me to not have a pair. So you just sold me. Yeah, Kieran says Broner is meant to be a free agent, but yet he can't sign with Hearn, for example, because apparently he owes Heyman money for legal fees. I can believe that. That sounds plausible to me. Ayed says Espinoza sabotaging the fight, I bet. Espinoza. Espinoza seems desperate right now. He seems like a desperate man. Very desperate man. But going back to what Kieran said about Anthony Yard, Yard against Kovalev. I was having some back and forth with what's the guy called Kelvin White, some Wilder fanboy in my boxing group, and for some reason he started having a go at me about the poll I did about Anthony Yard. I'm like, what's this all about? And he said, you've been calling for Yard to step up for all this time, and now that he steps up, you're complaining. I ain't complaining, but I never wanted Yard to jump from fighting Journeyman to facing Kovalev. Like, that was never my plan for him. That's ridiculous. When I was talking about a step up for Anthony Yard, I was talking about him fighting his domestic rivals. Not jumping from fighting cab drivers to elite world champions. No. There's no sense in that. But when people say those kind of things to you, they're really saying more about themselves than they're saying about me. You understand what I'm saying? Because this Kelvin White character, he thinks this way. You know, so if he's criticizing a fighter, he's hating. And so he assumes I'm hating too. That I don't have any rationale to what I'm saying about Anthony Yard. It's just that I don't like the guy. No, I like Anthony Yard. Early on in Yard's career, I was very, very optimistic about him. I was like, wow, this guy's really talented and I think he can go a long way. But after a certain amount of fights, when they kept him at the same level, knocking out all these journeymen, I started to ask questions. And then it got to the point where, you know what, this is not interesting anymore. If they're going to keep on putting him in there against overmatched opposition, I'm tuning out. You know, I'm not going to make no more videos about his fights until they put him in there with somebody that actually has a pulse. So it's not about and Tunde as well. Tunde is always talking so much rubbish. Because he's going to be saying this, right? If they put Yarden with Kovalev, Tunde's going to be saying, see, they complain when we were putting him in with those opponents before, and now we're putting him in with Kovalev and stepped him up the way people have been calling for. They're going to complain too. No, Tunde. No. I'm calling for an appropriate step up, not jumping from journeyman to Kovalev. But who knows, man? Maybe it's a master stroke by Tunde if they actually go through with that fight, because they might not. But if they go through with a fight and Yard beats Kovalev, then you have to really give Tunde a hell of a lot of credit, because he's been over there studying Kovalev, right? He was at both Kovalev Alvarez fights. He's been studying the guy. So he obviously sees something where he thinks Yard could beat him, maybe. So yeah, if Yard does beat him, then you have to give Tunde a hell of a lot of credit for a master stroke and paying real close attention and studying the opponent. And maybe he feels like they've got him at the right time. So we'll see whether Tunde's judgment is that good. But generally, when you take a fighter from fighting journeyman and put him in there against an elite world champion, it usually ends in disaster. That's how it normally ends. And the reason I did the poll is because I don't understand why they will be doing that. I don't understand why they wouldn't be gradually going up through the levels. Why jump from journeyman to elite level? I don't get it. Why not, test him gradually, the traditional way? Because obviously Frank Warren is not Anthony Yard's manager, he's only his promoter. Frank Warren presents Tunde with a list of opponents, and Tunde picks from the list of opponents. So it's essentially Tunde who is responsible for who Anthony Yard's fighting. But with Frank Warren, he normally likes to take his fighters down the traditional route. Yeah, he likes to get them British, Commonwealth, European, etc. That's what he did with Billy Joe Saunders. So for somebody like Anthony Yard, why don't they take him a similar route to that? British, Commonwealth, European. And I know someone's going to say, oh, he fought for the European title. No, he fought for the WBO European. That's not the real European title. That's some made-up WBO belt that's been around for like 2 years or something. Take him down the traditional route, British, Commonwealth, European, and that way you sufficiently test him at every level. If he doesn't pass the test at British level, you keep him at British level for a while, or drop him down a level, build him back up. Then when he's ready, then when he's winning at British level, or when he's performing the way you want him to at British level, you step him up to Commonwealth. Then if he's doing well there, you step him up to European. You know what I mean? Like, that's the traditional way that you build a fighter. But Tunde is obviously not a traditionalist. He doesn't want to do it that way. David Haye was built that way, right? David Haye did the whole... Actually, did David Haye fight for the British Cruiserweight title? I can't remember. But I'm sure he fought for the European, innit? European Cruiserweight title and Commonwealth and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually he fought Jean-Marc Mormec. He did lose to Carl Thompson for some kind of world title, but that wasn't a proper world title. And Carl Thompson was an old man. That wasn't supposed to be the fight that it turned out to be. That was supposed to be an easy knockover job for David Haye. But still, David Haye was built up basically gradually. So why don't they go that route with Anthony Yard? Why would they jump from journeyman to elite? I don't get it. So I'm just trying to figure out the thinking behind it. That's all. Okay, J.I. says, can you do a podcast on Malcolm X? Alright. Maybe we can get into Malcolm X, aka Malcolm Little, as he was born. Graham Coleman says, you see fast car freestyle at Canelo Jacobs press conference. Think then people in the US are starting to take to fast car now. No, I didn't see the freestyle. I'm going to have to YouTube that now. I want to hear. It can't be any worse than Anthony Joshua's freestyle. Jesus. Oh my God, Joshua can't rap to save his life. Jarrell Miller ain't much better, to be honest with you. Now, AJ is terrible at rapping, and Jarrell Miller ain't much better. So Fast Car can't be any worse than them two. I'm probably going to prefer Fast Car's bars to their bars, to be honest with you. Ayed says, what do you think of anti-pedophile activism, like the groups of normal people trying to catch pedophiles? Um, what do I think about it? I think that it's understandable, of course. I wish those anti-pedophile groups would target prominent pedophiles more so than regular common or garden, garden variety local neighborhood pedophiles. Although some of these local neighborhood pedophiles are tied into larger rings. But I just feel like the bigger problem is higher level pedophiles because they're the ones who are more likely to get away with it and never even see a day in jail. So I wish these vigilante groups would target them, do investigations into them more. I think that would make a much greater impact. But in terms of like targeting these local pedophiles who, there might just be one or two of them connected in a very small little local ring. Yeah, targeting, man, because a lot of the time they're let out of prison relatively early. I mean, you get these stories of the pedophiles that are moving next to schools and stuff like that, convicting. It's crazy stuff, right? But I don't know how much you can solve by targeting them. You know, I'm not saying don't target them, but I'm just saying I don't know how much that's really gonna solve. All right, Graham Coleman says, "Sorry, I meant just do the press conference off the cuff, no pay." Oh, okay. My bad. Yeah, even Nesta Gibbs gave him props. Yeah, Eddie Hearn has got an incredible ability to reel off facts and figures and names, dates, and places. It's incredible. Eddie Hearn must have something close to an eidetic memory, which is colloquially known as a photographic memory. He must have something close to that because this guy is incredibly busy. He does an enormous amount of shows. He's doing shows in Britain, in Italy. I think he is it in Germany now too. He's in a bunch of different countries in Europe, in Britain obviously, and America. And he can reel off who's going to be on the cards, what time these cards are starting, who the opponents are going to be, and months and months and months in advance. That's not normal, people. Frank Warren, who's been in the game for decades longer than Eddie Hearn, he can't do that. Frank Warren's always got a little piece of paper that he has to read off, and he's always stumbling and fumbling. And he's been in the game decades. And even in his prime when he was much younger, he couldn't reel off the names, dates, and places the way Eddie Hearn can. So Hearn has got a crazy memory, man. It's something like an eidetic memory. He can reel off all these things with no paper in front of him, just from memory. It's incredible. Incredible. Very sharp-minded guy. Alright, peeps, I'm going to end this live stream right here, but thank you guys for joining me, and I will catch you on Tuesday. Tuesday's podcast will be about a specific topic, or maybe choose two specific topics. I won't be all over the place answering different questions. I'm going to try and keep the questions more to these live Q&As so I can give people, immediate responses. But yeah, Tuesday's podcast will be about one or two specific topics. So I'll catch you guys for that. And again, apologies for the delay in this live stream, man. Just yesterday was just so hectic. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, catch you guys on the next one. I'm out.